Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where Reddit drama gets real. And today's lineup, it's a slow burn that explodes right out of the gate. We're kicking things off with a birthday party that goes nuclear when the writer throws a punch. Yeah, an actual punch at his dad's friend for humiliating his girlfriend. But that's just the start. From a secret baby daddy hidden behind a sister's new relationship, to a wife demanding to be a tradwife without doing any of the traditional stuff, to someone catching their own husband secretly filming them during sex. It's unfiltered, it's raw, and some of it, honestly, disturbing. We've got family secrets that'll make your stomach drop, marriages on the edge of collapse, coworkers throwing silent tantrums, a surprise dry wedding that definitely wasn't dry, and petty revenge burps because, yes, even Reddit can't stay serious for long. You'll get mad, you'll laugh, you'll probably want to text your best friend like, this man really tried to tradwife his way out of doing the dishes. And hey, we're pushing for 10,000 subscribers. So if you love the chaos, the storytelling, the emotional commentary, or just getting lost in other people's drama, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because this episode, this one's got punches thrown, trust broken, and a whole lot of "are you serious right now" moments. So let's not waste any time. Am I the asshole for saying if my wife wants to be a tradwife, then she must always look her best, wait on me, and provide sex without question when asked? 15 years. That's how long Ryder and his wife have been together. A decade and a half of shared life, shared decisions, shared responsibilities, through careers, a mortgage, and the hustle of building a stable life side by side. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. And it didn't shift slowly, it plummeted. 2 years ago, his wife began spiraling into what she called the tradwife lifestyle. For those unfamiliar, it's a niche, often idealized vision of 1950s housewifery: pearls, pie crusts, passive obedience, repackaged with a modern filter, complete with aesthetic Instagram reels and TikToks of smiling women setting tables in full makeup at 6 a.m. At first, it sounded harmless enough, a change of pace, maybe even nostalgia, but soon it went from "I'd like to quit my job" to "any man who lets his wife work is abusive." And here's where things started to really crack. Let's talk context. Ryder earns around 100K pounds as self-employed builder. His wife at the time worked a solid NHS management job, bringing in around 50K pounds, financially stable, mortgage-free, no kids, and after years of shared hustle, they had what many would call a dream setup. But then she wanted more, not emotionally, materially, a bigger house, a luxury car, and eventually to stop working completely. Ryder tried to compromise. He offered alternatives: a less stressful job, a new role that didn't burn her out. But no, she didn't want any job. She wanted out, but not just from work, from responsibility, because she didn't want to lose any of the lifestyle. The holidays, the new car, the 700-account home they couldn't afford on one salary. She wanted to keep it all while removing herself from the system entirely. And here's where the frustration becomes palpable. The tradwife ideal, at least in theory, includes certain commitments: cooking, cleaning, homemaking, a life built around serving and caring for the husband, often in exchange for financial support. But in this case, she cherry-picked the aesthetics without accepting the responsibilities. She didn't want to cook. Ryder did the cooking. She wanted a cleaner for the house. She didn't want to work, didn't want to budget, didn't want to scale down. She wanted the dream without lifting a finger. So, when she brought it up again, this time trying to fully step into her tradwife fantasy, Ryder flipped the script. "Fine," he said, "let's do this your way." But he didn't stop at, "you can stay home." He painted the whole picture, her own vision, right back at her. Breakfast on the table before he wakes. Full hair and makeup from morning to night, sexy 1950s dresses nonstop. Clean home, packed lunches, pies cooling on the windowsill. Baths drawn, feet rubbed, food ready. And yes, sex on demand, because that's what the lifestyle she watches online promotes, right? Suddenly, she wasn't so into it. She called him abusive, a user, sexist, and stormed off to her sister's house. Now let's pause. Is Ryder's list over the top? Absolutely. But that's the point. He didn't pull this fantasy from nowhere. He mirrored her own curated ideal. a lifestyle she's been obsessed with, so long as it didn't require any of the actual work. She wanted the visual, not the effort, the aesthetic, not the agreement, and more importantly, she wanted it one-sided. Because the moment Ryder asked for reciprocity, the moment he expected the same level of dedication she was demanding, she called it abuse. Let's be crystal clear. Demanding sex without consent is never okay. That part, that's dangerous territory. Relationships require mutual respect and autonomy. But in this context, he was making a dramatic point, using her own references to show just how unrealistic and hypocritical her expectations had become. She wanted the tradwife life without ever asking Ryder if he wanted a trad husband role. She decided on a lifestyle that affects them both, without collaboration. That's not a partnership. That's control. And now, Ryder's at a breaking point. He's looking at the relationship and wondering what's even left. Because when the balance disappears, when the give turns into all take, love gets swallowed by resentment. So, is Ryder the asshole? This one's complicated. But no, Ryder is not the asshole. He's sarcastic, maybe even scathing, but he's also drowning in frustration. For years, he's tried to meet his wife halfway. She's the one pushing the boundaries, demanding a lifestyle they can't afford and won't sustain. She's rewriting the rules without warning and without compromise. His response may have been petty, sure, but it was real. And in a situation where one person is trying to reshape the entire relationship dynamic without agreement, sometimes the only way to hold up the mirror is with a bit of brutal honesty. If she wants a tradwife lifestyle, then she needs to understand what that actually means. And if she doesn't, then they need to talk, not fantasize. Final verdict, Ryder is not the asshole. But they both need a serious conversation about reality, expectations, and mutual respect. Because love can't survive in fantasy forever, especially not the kind filtered through social media and convenience. And if she isn't willing to meet him in the middle, then maybe it's time to stop trying to live in the 1950s and start facing the 2025 truth. Let us know what you think. Is Ryder right to push back, or did he go too far with the videos she watches commentary? One thing's clear, if you want to play house, make sure you both agree on the rules. Update. Am I the asshole for saying if my wife wants to be a trad wife, she must always look her best, wait on me, and provide sex without question when asked? Let's rewind just a little. When Ryder first told this story, it sparked chaos. Not because people disagreed on the surface, but because of how raw and controversial the dynamic really was. The idea of a trad wife in theory may seem old-fashioned but charming to some. But in practice, as Ryder laid out, things had gone completely off the rails. Ryder clarified something important right away in this update. No, he wasn't seriously asking for a fantasy version of a 1950s Stepford wife who lives to rub his feet and bake pies on command. That whole laundry list of demands, that was satire, a jab, a mirror held up to show just how extreme her expectations had become. It was sarcasm with a sharp edge, because how else do you get someone to see how far they've wandered from reality? But here's the heartache. This didn't used to be who she was. Before the pandemic, Ryder's wife was a powerhouse, driven, smart, career-focused, not someone who got swept into social media fantasy spirals or retro aesthetics curated by influencers in pearls and aprons. This obsession with the trad wife lifestyle came out of nowhere, and it didn't just nudge their marriage, it steamrolled it. And when the idea first appeared, Ryder tried to meet her halfway. He didn't want her to suffer in a job she hated, but he encouraged a transition, not a full-on shutdown. He even offered ideas. Take a lower-stress job, find something fulfilling. But his wife wasn't interested in compromise. She wanted out of work, out of responsibilities, but not out of the lifestyle. She wanted the 700-pound house, the luxury car, the holidays, but without contributing to it. And when the trad wife thing finally came to a head, Ryder laid it bare. He put the cards on the table, no more games. He told her, this isn't sustainable. Either we work together and fix this, go to therapy, talk it through, or we go our separate ways. She chose the door. That right there is the turning point in this story. Because up until then, it felt like maybe, just maybe, this could have been salvaged. But she didn't just say no to therapy. She didn't just reject the offer of working things out. She doubled down, said there are dating sites full of men who want exactly what she wants. She was that committed to this fantasy. And that's when Ryder snapped. In a moment of raw honesty and maybe a little well-earned pettiness, he reminded her that what she wants isn't a traditional marriage. It's not even about values or structure. What she wants is a sugar daddy. And the cruel reality? She might not fit the criteria for that lifestyle anymore. Oof. That stung. And she let him know it. She screamed, she shouted, she called him weak, said a real man would give her everything, said he was the reason the marriage failed. And while all this was happening, this emotional explosion, Ryder was standing there, wondering how the person he married had become someone he barely recognized. And then came the mic drop. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you don't have sex. What part of being a trad wife do you actually offer? Harsh? Maybe. But was it true? Well, Ryder's been carrying the household, the cooking, the finances, and still getting called the villain. And just when it couldn't get more intense, he hits her with one final line, stolen straight from the comment section. You don't want to be a trad wife, you want to be a trophy wife. With that, she stormed off again to her sister's place. And this time, Ryder's not chasing her. He's not playing the villain in her fantasy anymore. He's calling a divorce lawyer, lining up paperwork. And then he's off to Portugal for a breather, a reset, a break from the madness. Let's be real, this whole situation is wild and there's a lot to unpack. Was Ryder harsh at times? Sure. But when you're being emotionally manipulated, when someone's trying to twist your role from partner to provider and punching bag, there's only so much grace you can give before it turns into self-sacrifice. The idea of being a trad wife isn't inherently toxic, but it becomes toxic real fast when it's a one-sided fantasy. When it's not about love, care, or mutual respect, but control, entitlement, and escape from responsibility. So am I the asshole? Ryder didn't ask for perfection. He asked for partnership. He didn't want a maid, a sex robot, or a 1950s doll in lipstick. He wanted the woman he married, ambitious, driven, equal. Instead, he got someone who expects a dream life without lifting a finger, who shouts abuse when asked to contribute, and who refuses to engage in the real hard work of fixing things. And now, he's finally done being the one making all the sacrifices. Verdict? You tell me, but it sure sounds like this marriage died the moment fantasy took over reality, and Ryder finally chose himself. Am I the asshole for being upset that I caught my husband filming us during sex without my consent? There are moments in a relationship that should feel sacred, intimate, built on trust that's been earned over time. And when that trust is broken, not with loud betrayal, but with a quiet, hidden act, it can shake you to your core. That's exactly where this story begins. In a bedroom, with someone who thought they knew the person beside them, until a small, glowing light revealed otherwise. The writer was with her husband. They were deep in an intimate moment, something private, something shared, something that's supposed to be for them and them alone. Things were getting intense, passionate even, a new position, a shift in energy. But then something changed. She noticed a light, a glow, out of place in a moment that should have been grounded in connection, not technology. And at first, the writer tried to brush it off. She tried to stay in the moment, to stay connected. But the human brain is wired for survival, and something just felt wrong. So she turned her head and saw it. Her husband, the man she trusted most, was holding up his phone. Without a word, without consent, without any prior conversation, just quietly, deliberately filming their most vulnerable moment together and not saying a damn thing about it. The writer reacted instantly. She called him out. "What are you doing?" That's not shock. That's betrayal wrapped in confusion. And what did he do? He tossed the phone aside, kept going, carried on like nothing had happened. Let's just sit with that. She caught him, confronted him. And instead of stopping everything, instead of immediately apologizing or explaining or even checking in on how she felt, he just kept going. That's not miscommunication. That's disregard. And afterward, when it was all said and done, he finished, rolled over, and left her alone with her thoughts, with the heaviness, with the unease crawling across her skin, with the slow realization that something she thought was private might have been turned into content. Now the writer is spiraling, not just because of what happened in the moment, but because of what it means. Why was he filming? Who was it for? Was he planning to keep it, share it? Was this a one-time thing or something he's done before? And perhaps most importantly, why didn't he think to ask? This isn't a small thing. Consent in intimacy isn't just about the act itself. It's about everything that surrounds it, especially when it comes to filming. That's a deeply vulnerable thing, and for some, it's a hard no, a boundary that's non-negotiable. The writer made it clear this isn't her thing. It never has been. So now she's left wondering, is this normal? Am I overthinking this? Is it just a misunderstanding? Let's be blunt. No, writer, you are not overthinking this. This isn't about being insecure or dramatic. It's about being violated in a moment of trust. And that feeling, that deep, sickening discomfort, is your body sounding an alarm. You're not wrong to feel betrayed. You're not wrong to feel unsafe, because what your husband did wasn't just a bad choice. It was a violation of your autonomy, of your right to say what happens to your body and how. And the fact that he didn't pause, didn't explain, didn't even acknowledge how serious this was, that's the part that twists the knife. So, am I the asshole for being upset, for needing answers, for feeling like your world tilted just a little off center because someone you loved made you feel like your consent didn't matter? No, you're not the asshole. You're a human being trying to process a violation that never should have happened. And yes, you should talk to him. And no, this isn't just about a video. It's about trust. It's about how he handles your boundaries. It's about whether you can feel safe in your own skin when you're with him again. Because when trust breaks in a bedroom, it echoes everywhere else. Let me ask you this. How would you feel if the person you trusted most chose to record one of your most intimate moments without a single word of warning? Let me know in the comments, because this one cuts deep. Am I the asshole for not wanting to tell my sister that her boyfriend is the father of my son? Writer didn't come here to stir drama. They came here looking for clarity. But what they're carrying isn't just a secret. It's the kind of emotional weight that presses against your chest in the middle of the night when the world is quiet and your thoughts are screaming. Years ago, back in college, Writer was in love. Real love, or at least what felt like it. She was 24, and he, Luke, was 26. They were serious, enough so that when Writer found out she was pregnant near the end of their relationship, she truly believed they'd face it together. Luke said he'd be there for her. He said all the right things. Support, family, working it out together. But actions speak louder than words, and his actions screamed abandonment. The very next day, he vanished. No phone call, no goodbye. Just a package in the mail, some cash, and a note cold enough to snap the spine for the abortion. That was it. No explanation, no closure, just silence. So, Writer did what many strong people do when they're left with shattered pieces. She picked them up. She moved back home, kept the pregnancy to herself, and raised her son alone. She didn't even tell her family who the father was. She shielded them from the chaos, from the heartbreak. She took it all on, and for 2 years, she made it work. Not perfect, but steady, safe. Then, weeks ago, life dropped a bomb with no warning. Her older sister, happy, glowing, announced that she'd be bringing her new boyfriend to a family birthday dinner. Writer had no reason to suspect anything, no warning, no clue, until he walked through the door. Luke. Da damn Luke. The man who ghosted her when she was at her most vulnerable. The man who tried to buy her silence with a wad of cash and a 2-sentence note. He walked into that dinner like he was just another guy meeting the family. He didn't say a word. Neither did she. Can you imagine that moment? Sitting across the table from the father of your child, as he wraps his arm around your sister, laughs with your parents, acts like a stranger. Writer left early, and honestly, who wouldn't? Later that night, Luke showed up. Not to apologize, not to beg for forgiveness, but to talk, to explain. He claimed he hadn't ghosted her, that his parents found out about the pregnancy and pulled him out of school, cut off all communication, and were the ones who sent the money and note. He claimed he thought Writer had gone through with the abortion. Now, maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. It's not easy to trust the mouth that once went silent when you needed it most. But Ryder says he looked genuinely shaken, shocked, like he'd just seen a ghost that was never meant to return. He asked if she was going to tell her sister. Ryder said no. She didn't want to create unnecessary conflict, especially if the relationship was new and might fade out on its own. And that's where we are now. Weeks later. Luke hasn't reached out again. Ryder hasn't said a word. But the silence is growing heavier. She's been avoiding them both, dodging family gatherings, letting texts go unanswered. She says her sister doesn't suspect anything, but the tension, it's thick, it's real, it's coming. And here's the thing, Ryder doesn't want to lie, but she also doesn't want to blow up her sister's life over something that might not last. At the same time, if this does last, if her sister falls deeper for this man, if there are plans, promises, maybe even rings down the line, what happens when the truth finally comes out? Because it will. Secrets like this always do. So, am I the asshole for not wanting to tell my sister that her boyfriend is the father of my son? This isn't some petty drama or trivial Reddit spat. This is real, raw, messy. It's about trauma, betrayal, and the impossible decision of when or if to speak the truth. From one angle, Ryder has every right to protect her peace. Luke didn't just leave, he discarded her, and now through a cruel twist of fate, he's entangled in her family again. From another angle, the sister deserves to know who she's dating. She deserves the truth, no matter how painful. Because how can you truly love someone if half the story's been cut out? But here's what makes it complex. Ryder's not trying to punish anyone. She's not playing games or being vindictive. She's trying to survive the impossible. And sometimes survival looks like silence, like waiting, like hoping the storm passes before you have to walk into it. The truth is, there's no easy answer here. But the longer the silence drags on, the more powerful the storm becomes. Because secrets don't stay secrets forever. And when they finally come out, they come out hard. Let us know, is Ryder the asshole for keeping this to herself, or is she just doing the best she can with an impossible hand? Am I the asshole for not apologizing to my coworker after she ignored me for 3 weeks over one comment? There are few things more frustrating in a professional environment than dead weight. Someone who clocks in, shows up, maybe smiles at the coffee machine, but when it comes to actual work, silence, shrugs, vanishing acts. And over time, even the most patient person can start to feel their frustration boil over. In this case, the writer is exactly that person. They've been working alongside a coworker, let's call her A, for 3 years. And according to the writer, A has consistently done the bare minimum, or less. You know the type. The person you have to carry on your back during group projects, the one who nods along in meetings, but whose name mysteriously never appears in the completed by section. Now, at one recent team meeting, the moment of reckoning arrived. The manager starts assigning tasks, and when A is handed hers, she responds with mock horror. What, me? And the writer, clearly already at the end of their rope, doesn't hold back. Without thinking, they shoot back a comment dripping with dry sarcasm. Well, you have to do something. Oof. It stings. But was it that bad? Apparently, for A, it was devastating. She didn't say anything in the moment, didn't raise a concern or even ask for clarification. Instead, she chose the nuclear route, 3 full weeks of completely ignoring the writer. And not in a subtle way. We're talking blank stares, walking past them like a ghost, refusing to acknowledge their presence at all. The kind of silent treatment you expect from a teenager, not a professional in a team of less than 5 people. And it didn't end there. A had a project task, one the writer says was so bad it couldn't even be salvaged. Deadline looming, the writer took it upon themselves to redo it. Not to be spiteful, but because the work simply couldn't go out in that condition. It was, as they described, ChatGPT in 5 minutes level bad. When A found out, she doubled down on the silent treatment. Now it was betrayal. And here's where it starts getting really complicated. The writer, in the beginning, gave her space. Days passed, then weeks. But eventually, the writer decided enough was enough. I'm not going to be the first to break, they thought. Because while they admit the comment wasn't nice, this extended Cold War over a single snarky sentence felt insane. Other coworkers noticed. In fact, one of them even confronted A directly. pointing out how uncomfortable things had become, how her behavior was affecting everyone in the room. A's response? That she needed more time, that the writer's words had hurt her deeply. And the writer? They didn't apologize. Not because they wouldn't, but because they feel they shouldn't have to chase someone down for a conversation they're refusing to have. If A had simply walked over and said, "Hey, that comment really bothered me," there might have been an apology on the spot. But instead, she's choosing radio silence and passive aggression in a tiny team where cooperation is survival. And so the writer is left wondering, am I the asshole for not apologizing first? Here's the thing. In the workplace, tensions are inevitable. People rub each other the wrong way. That's normal. But what separates functional teams from toxic ones is how people handle that friction. And right now, this is pure dysfunction. Let's be clear, the writer's comment was snarky. It wasn't kind, but it also wasn't a personal attack. It was a slip, born out of years of building resentment over one person not pulling their weight. And if that's what cracked the surface, it didn't come out of nowhere. On the other hand, A's response wasn't just unprofessional, it was childish. Ignoring a colleague completely for 3 weeks in a tiny team is more than just dramatic. It actively hurts the work environment, drags morale down, and disrupts productivity. If you're that hurt, you communicate. You don't ghost your team. Even their manager, in the end, had to intervene, reassigning the task to the writer, because A's submission was simply unusable. That alone should speak volumes, so no, the writer isn't perfect. But are they the asshole? Absolutely not. They're not being cold or cruel. They're not pretending they did nothing wrong. They're just unwilling to extend an olive branch to someone who hasn't even glanced in their direction since. In this kind of setting, mutual respect is a two-way street, and right now only one person's walking on it. So what do you think? Should the writer swallow their pride and apologize first, just to end the tension? Or does A owe it to the team and to herself to grow up and address the conflict like an adult? Because at the end of the day, office drama is messy, but grown-ups talk it out. Or at least they should. Am I the asshole for putting my mom in an awkward position by telling her I don't like my stepsister? Let's be honest, blended families are messy. Not in the Brady Bunch way people like to imagine, with matching outfits and cheerful bonding moments over board games and pancakes. No, the real kind of messy. The kind where love is uneven, emotions are complicated, and no one really talks about how hard it is to stitch two families together after life tears the original one apart. The writer is 17, just a kid, still figuring himself out. But he's also someone who lost his father at 9 years old. That kind of loss? It doesn't fade with time. It lingers. It shapes who you are. So when his mom remarried a man named Jonathan 3 years later, it wasn't just a new husband walking into their lives, it was a whole new family dynamic. A new reality. And with Jonathan came Cassie. Same age, same house, different lives. They met 4 months before the wedding. And sure, it was civil at first. The kind of polite, surface-level tolerance you muster when you're forced to share space with someone you didn't ask for. But for the writer, that getting along phase never deepened. It never grew into something real. Cassie had a way of treating him more like a personal assistant than a stepbrother. She'd ask him to grab things from high shelves because she's short and he's tall. Ask him to help rearrange her room, to explain school assignments, not just to her, but to her friends. And when he said no, which he had every right to do, she didn't just shrug it off. No. She got angry, slammed doors, pulled at him, guilt-tripped him. And then there's the part that hits even deeper. Cassie made it clear she thought it was morbid that the writer still talks about his dad, that he keeps a photo of him in his room, that he wishes him happy birthday online. One time, she even had the nerve to try and touch the photo, and then acted like he was the one being cruel when he asked her not to. Let's pause here, because that isn't just tension between teens. That's someone invalidating grief. That's someone brushing off the memory of a person who shaped the writer's entire life. And yeah, maybe Cassie has her own scars. Her mother's never been in her life, and that's not easy either. But pain doesn't cancel out pain. And having her own trauma doesn't give her permission to belittle his. So the writer did what a lot of kids do in blended families. He tolerated it. He didn't cause drama. He played along, even when it felt fake. And it worked. Cassie thought they were close. His mom thought so too. Even Jonathan believed it. But sometimes the mask gets heavy. Cassie wanted to go on a cabin trip with friends. Jonathan wasn't comfortable with her going unless someone else went too. Someone responsible. So of course, the pressure landed on the writer. Once again, he was expected to put his life on pause to help Cassie live hers. And this time, he finally said something. He asked his mom to talk, just the two of them. And over milkshakes, he laid it all out. Gently, honestly. He didn't scream or throw blame, he just told the truth. That he doesn't feel close to Cassie, that he's been pretending, that he doesn't dislike her out of malice, but that love, connection, it's just not there. He was vulnerable, raw, and for once, he wasn't pretending. And what did his mom say? That he put her in an awkward position. Not, thank you for being honest. Not, I understand how hard this has been. Just that now things are complicated because Jonathan would be upset, because Cassie sees him as a brother, because she loves Cassie too. It's heartbreaking because the writer didn't ask for any of this. He didn't choose this family. He's done nothing but try to keep the peace in a household where he's expected to feel things he doesn't feel. And when he finally opened up, finally asked to be seen, he got guilt instead of grace. Now his mom's distant, Jonathan's angry, and the writer is left wondering if he should have just kept pretending a little longer until college created distance and time made it easier to drift away from the charade. So am I the asshole for not loving someone he never connected with? For refusing to be her babysitter, her emotional crutch, her pretend brother? For finally choosing honesty over comfort? No, the writer is not the asshole. He's a teenager navigating grief, complex relationships, and the pressure to keep everyone else happy while ignoring his own feelings. He didn't scream, he didn't lash out, he just told the truth, and somehow that made him the problem. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't saying, I don't care about this person. It's saying it out loud to someone who expects you to. This isn't about cruelty. It's about capacity. About how sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just don't feel the connection you're supposed to feel. And instead of punishing that honesty, maybe, just maybe, someone should have finally told the writer that it's okay. You don't owe anyone love you don't feel. And you definitely don't owe silence to protect everyone else's version of the truth. Let's bring it to you all. What do you think? Was the writer wrong for being honest? Or is it time more people stop pretending that family automatically means bonded? Drop your thoughts below. Because this one is real. Am I the asshole for secretly selling alcohol at my dry wedding to offset costs? Weddings, they're supposed to be the most magical day of your life. But let's be real, they're also insanely expensive. The flowers, the food, the venue, the dress, the little details you don't even notice until 3 days before. It adds up fast, and that's exactly where the writer found herself. A 27-year-old bride with a big dream, a bigger guest list, 300 people, and a very delicate balancing act to maintain between modern expectations and very traditional family dynamics. See, both the writer and her husband come from conservative, religious families. And when the wedding planning started, it was made crystal clear. This wedding must be dry. No alcohol, no toasts, no open bar, no wine with dinner, not even a subtle champagne bottle hiding behind the cake. Their families weren't just suggesting it, they were expecting it. So, to keep the peace, the writer agreed. They told the entire family the wedding would be alcohol-free, and on paper, that's exactly what it was. But behind the scenes, that's where the story shifts. Here's the twist. The writer wasn't just navigating family expectations, she was also paying for most of this wedding out of her own pocket. And when you're staring down that kind of bill, watching the catering quote alone nearly give you a heart attack, you start getting creative. That's when the writer had an idea. Not just a what-if moment. No, this was a full-blown operation. She reached out to a friend, a licensed bartender, and arranged to set up a hidden private VIP bar inside a side room at the venue. Think wedding speakeasy, discreet, off the main path. Only for those in the know. About 75 guests were tipped off ahead of time. Younger friends, more relaxed cousins, people who weren't likely to clutch their pearls at the sight of a cocktail. And it wasn't a free-for-all either. Drinks were sold, $5 beers, $8 cocktails. Fair prices, totally optional, and a welcome surprise for folks used to dry weddings in their community. And guess what? It worked. Guests loved it. They felt like part of something exclusive, a little secret in the celebration. The vibe? Effortless. Chill. And between drink sales and bartender tips, which, to clarify, the bartender kept in full, the writer made $2,000. That money helped pay off part of the catering bill. A small win, but a huge relief. But, as with all secrets, word got out. Somewhere between the chicken entrees and the father-daughter dance, a few of the writer's aunts caught wind of the secret bar. They didn't see it, they didn't drink, but someone mentioned it within earshot, and the damage was done. Cue the fallout. The writer's mother lost it. Accused her of lying, of disrespecting the family, of mocking their values. Her mother-in-law called her manipulative and selfish. And suddenly, that little side room with twinkle lights and a few happy guests became the symbol of betrayal in the eyes of her entire extended family. It didn't matter that most of the guests had no idea the bar even existed. It didn't matter that no one was forced to drink. It didn't matter that this small side hustle helped make the wedding possible in the first place. To them, it was deceitful, a violation, a public stain on their family image. Now here's where it gets complicated. The writer's husband didn't even know about it. She hadn't told him beforehand. Not because she was trying to be sneaky with him, but because she knew he'd panic, he'd stress, he'd talk her out of it. Not because he disagreed, but because he'd feel guilty, he'd feel torn, and she didn't want that for him. Not during one of the biggest weeks of their lives. He's stuck in the middle now, understanding her motives, but still uneasy with the secrecy. Let's pause here, because this post isn't really about alcohol. This post is about navigating identity, trying to keep your foot in two worlds, one that raised you with rules, and another you're trying to build for yourself with freedom and practicality. The writer didn't create a secret bar out of spite or rebellion. She did it because weddings are a financial black hole, and she was trying to survive it. She gave a select group of guests a little extra experience, didn't disturb the rest, and walked away with a small chunk of her bills paid. To some, that sounds clever, resourceful, even kind of genius. But to others, it's deception, a public shame, an insult to tradition. So is the writer the villain here? No, absolutely not. She's a bride trying to walk a tightrope between generations, between expectations, between cost and compromise. She made a call that ruffled feathers, sure. But it wasn't reckless. It wasn't selfish. It was calculated and, in her mind, harmless. If anything, this whole situation reveals more about the people around her than it does about her choices. Why does the existence of alcohol offend them more than the burden she carried to make this wedding happen? Why is the appearance of perfection more important than the reality of struggle? In the end, the writer might have bent the truth, but she didn't break it. She didn't endanger anyone. She didn't ruin anyone's experience. The ones who knew enjoyed it, the ones who didn't, they never would have noticed if someone hadn't whispered. So no, the writer is not the asshole. She's just a woman who found a creative, discreet way to survive a $30,000 day and is now dealing with the fallout of being smarter than the people who expected her to just smile and nod. Weddings, huh? They bring out the best in people, and sometimes the very worst. Am I the asshole for using a family name for my baby's middle name, even though it's the same as my friend's baby's middle name? Naming a child is intimate, it's emotional, it's legacy. It's the whispered echo of generations past carried into a new life. And in this story, that echo has become a source of friction, a quiet storm brewing between two soon-to-be mothers who, once upon a time, were just friends. Now, they're walking parallel paths that suddenly feel a little too close. The writer is expecting her first child with her fiancé, a beautiful, deeply emotional chapter of life filled with love, planning, and yes, a long-held dream about the perfect name. Not just any name either, a name laced with meaning, a name that pulls threads from both her family and her fiancé's, weaving them into something sacred, a name chosen long before there was even a baby to give it to. So naturally, when the writer shared her baby name plans with her friend, someone she probably trusted enough to let into this intimate space, she didn't expect this to happen. The middle name in question, it's not rare. In fact, it's extremely common. A name you've probably heard dozens of times across families, generations, and even movie credits. But for the writer, it's not just a popular middle name, it's personal. It honors her family. It matters. But when the friend heard it, her reaction wasn't warmth or support. It was disappointment, maybe even a hint of territorialism. Are you really using that middle name? That one sentence, so casual on the surface, held layers of tension. Turns out the friend had picked out that exact same middle name for her own baby, and she wasn't too happy about the overlap. She said she just wanted her own middle name, something unique, something hers. Now look, middle names rarely see the spotlight. They're tucked away behind first names, often only seen on documents or graduation programs. Yet somehow, for this friend, sharing a middle name felt like an invasion, a betrayal. The writer tried to see her point. Really, she did. She acknowledged the timing. She acknowledged that being pregnant at the same time as someone else comes with weird, unspoken pressures, comparisons, overlapping milestones, baby shower envy. It can all bubble beneath the surface. But here's the thing. This wasn't about copying or competition. It wasn't about one-upping anyone. It was about family, about honoring people who came before, about keeping a promise to herself she made years ago, that if she ever had a baby, that name would be part of their story. And yet the friend's reaction only got colder, passive-aggressive even. She told the writer, almost like a guilt trip, that she'd change her baby's name now just to avoid the overlap. Let's pause on that for a second. She didn't have to change it. No one asked her to. The writer certainly wasn't laying any claim to the name. But the friend made it sound like the writer had ruined everything, like her baby's identity had been stolen out from under her. It's heavy stuff. Two people, both pregnant, both emotional, both building dreams, and suddenly one word, one name has driven a wedge between them. And here's the gut punch. The writer is being made to feel guilty. Guilty for wanting to honor her loved ones. Guilty for not backing down. Guilty for something that, let's be honest, shouldn't even be a conflict. Because what does it really mean to share a middle name? It doesn't mean their kids will be confused at roll call. It doesn't mean their lives will overlap in any meaningful way because of it. What it should mean is that both families cared enough about the same legacy to pass it down, that two different children are carrying the same thread of love and remembrance in their names. That's something beautiful, not something worth fighting over.
So, am I the asshole?
For holding on to a name that means something deep to her heart, for not backing down when guilt started to creep in, for believing there's enough room in this world for two babies with the same middle name? Absolutely not. The writer isn't selfish. She isn't petty. She isn't trying to one-up her friend. She's just trying to stay true to what matters to her. And in a moment like this, that takes strength. If anything, it's heartbreaking that a moment that should have been about connection, shared joy, new beginnings, turned into rivalry over something that should have brought them closer. Because this isn't about names. It's about feelings, insecurity, fear of being overshadowed. And when those emotions come into play, logic often takes a back seat. In the end, the writer may not be able to change how her friend feels, but she shouldn't have to rewrite her child's story to protect someone else's feelings, especially when that story started long before this friendship got complicated. What do you think? Was the writer right to stand her ground, or should she have given in to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this one's about more than just a name. It's about how we handle friendships, family, and the lines in between. Am I the asshole for asking my husband's Italian friend to cook for herself and telling her I wouldn't eat her food? Let's set the scene. Writer, an Asian woman living in Melbourne, has opened her home to a guest, a friend of her husband's. Not just any friend, mind you. This one flew in all the way from Bellagio, Italy. And while you might expect culture shock, some jet lag, maybe a few awkward misunderstandings, what actually unfolds? It's a full-blown culinary war. From day one, this guest makes it clear. Italian food reigns supreme. Ryder tries, she really tries. Takes her to restaurants, wants to show off the colorful, multicultural palette that makes Melbourne so special. Thai food? Nope. Sushi? Disrespectful, apparently. Chinese? Not a chance. All rejected, dismissed even with an upturned nose and a flick of superiority. Because, in her words, Italian food is the best. So fine. They go out for Italian 3 days in a row. And what does she do? She complains about the pasta, the cheese, the wine, even the coffee isn't safe. Ryder dares to order a cappuccino at 4 p.m., and this woman practically gasps like it's a federal crime. We don't drink cappuccino after 12 p.m., she scolds. But here's the thing, Ryder is just trying to live. She's in her own country, in her own city, in her own skin. And this woman is acting like she's on some Michelin-starred mission to fix everything. Then comes the shopping trip. At the supermarket, the Italian guest walks straight into the pasta aisle like she's entering a sacred temple, only to immediately start correcting Ryder's pronunciation in public. In the middle of Kohl's, she starts naming pastas like she's hosting a language lesson and Ryder's the failing student. But the final straw, that comes at home. Ryder decides to do what most of us would do, cook what she knows best. She whips up an Asian dish, flavorful, seasoned, bold, and instead of appreciation, the guest walks in, sniffs, and declares, "Your house smells bad." Now pause. That's not just rude, that's next level disrespect. She completely ignores the food, asks the husband to take her out for more Italian, and later returns just to throw salt in the wound. "You should learn how to cook Italian," she says. "It's not good for your husband to always eat fusion food." Excuse me? Ryder, understandably fed up, finally speaks her mind. She tells the woman exactly what many of us were already thinking. That this relentless food superiority is arrogant, that just because something comes from Italy doesn't make it better. That she's in a new country, and if she can't adjust even slightly, then she can cook for herself. And that's when the guest cries and decides to leave early. Cue the guilt trip. Ryder's husband, trying to smooth things over, explains that this friend has barely traveled. She's 60. This is only her second trip outside Italy. The last one was over 25 years ago. He asks Ryder to apologize, just to keep the peace. But Ryder stands her ground. And here's where it gets real. She's not dealing with someone who just has different tastes. She's dealing with someone who refuses to bend, even slightly, to the world around her. Someone who comes into another home, another country, another culture, and instead of appreciating it, spends every moment trying to recreate Italy and tearing everything else down in the process. So, is Ryder the asshole? No, she is not. She's a host, a patient one, for far longer than most would be. She gave this woman her time, her hospitality, her home, and in return, she got condescension, superiority, and outright insults to her food, her culture, her cooking, her accent. This wasn't about one bad dinner. It was about respect, or the complete lack of it. Ryder didn't shame the woman for being Italian. She didn't mock her culture. She didn't spit on lasagna. All she asked for, was the same respect in return. And if the guest couldn't give it, then no, she doesn't get to be babied just because she's not well-traveled. That's not an excuse. That's a pattern. Hospitality does not mean being a doormat. Tolerance doesn't mean tolerating everything. And food is love. It's how many of us express our culture, our history, our identity. To walk into someone's home and dismiss their cooking as smelly or wrong, that's not just rude. That's a slap in the face. Final verdict. Ryder is absolutely not the asshole. She didn't insult Italian food. She just refused to let someone else stomp on hers. She protected her space, her dignity, and her culture. And if that makes someone cry, then maybe they needed to hear it. Because sometimes when in Rome isn't just a saying. Sometimes when you're not in Rome, you eat what's on the table, smile, and say thank you, or you cook for yourself. Let us know what you think. Was Ryder right to stand her ground, or should she have said sorry to keep the peace? Personally, I think she served up exactly what was needed. A dish called reality, with just the right amount of spice. Am I the asshole for moving into the house I inherited, even though the lodger doesn't feel comfortable around men? Let's set the scene. A quiet house, a legacy passed down through generations. A place once occupied by an older woman, someone warm, familiar, gentle. For the lodger and her young daughter, it was a sanctuary. Safety in the form of soft footsteps, quiet afternoons, and an escape from a world that had been too harsh on them. And then suddenly that world shifted. The writer, having inherited this home, did what many of us would. He moved in, not out of malice, not to disrupt anyone's peace, but because this was his family's home now, his responsibility, his future. But the lodger, she saw a man, a stranger, and with that, everything changed for her. She didn't voice her feelings face to face. She didn't try to talk. Instead, she slipped notes under doors like whispers in a haunted house. I don't feel safe. I'm scared. My daughter deserves peace. All because the writer was male, not cruel, not aggressive, just male. Now let's pause here. This part hits differently because on one hand, we get it. Trauma is real. Trust is fragile. And for a woman trying to rebuild stability after an abusive relationship, any unexpected change, especially the presence of a man, can feel like a threat. But here's where it starts to twist. This isn't a friend she moved in with. This isn't a lease that promised solitude. She was renting a room for $150 a month, mind you, an absolute steal, made possible only through a personal arrangement with the now deceased former owner. And yet, she expects the writer to uproot his life, abandon his home, walk away from his inheritance, from his family's legacy, from financial and legal responsibilities, all because she feels uncomfortable with his existence in his own house. This isn't a story about a villain barging in and ruining someone's life. This is a story about a person who tried to tiptoe around someone else's pain, only to be painted as the problem simply for existing. Ryder didn't throw her out. He didn't raise the rent. He didn't storm in with boxes and demand she leave by sundown. No, he said, gently through writing no less, that she's free to go whenever she needs to. No pressure, no blame, just facts. And what does she do? Leaves another note. This one pleading, confessing that she can't really afford to go, that her daughter's education depends on this location, that she might be forced to move back in with her ex, the very person she was trying to escape. Now the story shifts again, because suddenly her discomfort becomes his burden. Her trauma, her choices, her past, they're being laid at his feet. The underlying message? You moving in makes our lives harder, so you should leave instead. Let that sink in, because here's the part that really stings. She's asking for Ryder to move out of his own inherited home, a place he now pays the mortgage on, just so she can continue living in an arrangement that no longer exists. And it's not like Ryder has a long list of options. Renting the room to another female tenant won't cover the mortgage. Selling the house? Not realistic, especially when there's a time-sensitive tax reassessment loophole that makes moving in now financially necessary. Leaving it vacant means eating thousands in expenses. Emotionally, he's still not ready to clear out his grandmother's things, but practically, he also just can't afford to go. So, what now? What started as a quiet transition into a new chapter of life has turned into a guilt-ridden standoff. Ryder is being made to feel like the intruder in his own story. And yet, he's not kicking anyone out. He's just living in the space that's rightfully his. He's been respectful, patient, and clear. And the person throwing accusations of discomfort hasn't said a word aloud. Let's be honest. This is one of those emotionally messy situations where pain and practicality crash into each other, and nobody walks away without bruises. But does that make Ryder the bad guy? The intruder? The heartless homeowner? No. It makes him human. A man dealing with grief, navigating legal complexities, and trying to honor the place left behind by someone he loved, all while being cast as the villain for doing nothing more than existing in the home he was entrusted with. So, am I the asshole? For wanting to live in your own home? For not being able to afford two places at once? For not demanding anyone leave, but simply staying where you belong? Absolutely not. In a perfect world, everyone would feel safe, everyone would heal. But this isn't a perfect world, and no one should be expected to set themselves on fire to keep someone else warm, especially not in the house that now holds their own future. Sometimes, compassion is setting boundaries, and this is one of those times. Let me know what you think in the comments, because this one walks a tightrope, and I want to hear your take. Am I the asshole because my 4-year-old daughter called out my girlfriend for having body odor? Parenting is complicated. Anyone who tells you it's sunshine and finger paints clearly hasn't tried reasoning with a toddler in public or explaining why cookies can't be eaten for dinner, again. But then there are moments, unfiltered, raw, completely honest moments, that stop everything cold. And sometimes that honesty stings. The writer is a 37-year-old mom doing her best to raise a bold, bright, and blunt little girl. And when we say blunt, we mean it in the purest, most childlike sense. The kind that doesn't know tact, doesn't know how to tiptoe around someone else's pride, just says it straight. The scene? A hot day. Long, sticky, draining. You can practically feel the exhaustion clinging to the skin. And then, ding dong, the door opens. It's the writer's girlfriend, 31, stopping by to finally meet the writer's daughter. This is a big deal. It's not just, hey, come over and hang out. This is meeting the kid. That invisible checkpoint in a relationship that says, I see a future here. That unspoken step that suggests the relationship is moving forward. And for the girlfriend, it must have felt important enough to show up after a long day, maybe too exhausted to fuss with a shower, maybe just hoping to make a good impression. But kids don't do impressions. They just do the truth. And this little girl, 4 years old, probably sitting there with her juice box and zero filter, looked the girlfriend in the eyes and said, "You're stinky. You need a bath." Oof, it hits like a slap, doesn't it? Small mouth, big impact. The kind of thing that adults would never dare to say out loud, but kids toss out like it's the weather. The girlfriend? She froze, embarrassed, humiliated, trying to laugh it off, but clearly stung. And the writer, caught in the middle of the collision between a child's honesty and a partner's pride, corrected her daughter gently, told her it was mean. The little one apologized, and that could have been the end of it. But it wasn't, because even after the apology, the air shifted. The girlfriend tried to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She stayed quiet. Hurt. That off-balance kind of hurt where you try to pretend everything's fine, because technically, no one did anything wrong, but deep down, you're wondering if you're not enough. If maybe that one innocent comment reflected something real. And the writer, she's left sitting with the aftermath, wondering, was this her fault? See, she admits she's been raising her daughter to speak plainly, no sugarcoating, no fake niceties. But now she's seeing the cracks, how that unfiltered honesty might have wounded someone who already felt a little vulnerable walking into this new family dynamic. So now she's asking, am I the asshole? Let's dig in. Is the writer the asshole for how her daughter behaved? No, not even close. Children say what they see. They don't mean harm. They don't understand the weight of their words yet. That doesn't make them rude, it makes them honest. And honestly, a 4-year-old noticing body odor isn't evil, it's observant. If anything, it just proves she's paying attention. But here's where it gets deeper. The writer feels responsible, and that matters. Because it shows awareness, it shows love. It shows that she's not dismissing her girlfriend's feelings or brushing the whole thing off with, kids say weird stuff, get over it. She sees that this moment landed hard. And she's trying to figure out if the way she's parenting might be part of the reason. It's the internal conflict that makes this post hit harder than it seems at first glance. On one hand, you want to raise a kid who speaks their mind. On the other, you don't want to raise someone who accidentally wounds others without realizing it. That's a razor-thin line. And the writer, she's trying to walk it without a guidebook. But let's also take a second to acknowledge the girlfriend. She showed up tired, showed up maybe not at her best, and she still showed up. That's something. The sting of being told you smell bad, especially by a child in front of your partner, that'll cut straight through any adult ego. So her hurt, that's valid too. But where does that leave the writer? In the crossfire, and wondering if she should have prepared her daughter better. Wondering if her blunt style might have done more harm than good, even when no one meant anything cruel. So, is the writer the asshole? No. She's a parent navigating the impossible. She's a woman trying to blend a relationship with motherhood and manage the clashing tides of honesty and sensitivity. She handled the moment as best she could, gently correcting her daughter, encouraging an apology, and now reflecting deeply on how to do better next time. That isn't failure. That's growth. And if anything, the real test will be in what comes next. Will she have an honest conversation with her girlfriend? Will she help her daughter learn the difference between honesty and tact without crushing her curiosity and voice? Will she balance the heart of a child with the soul of a partner? Because that's where the real work of love lives, not in avoiding mistakes, but in repairing the quiet damage they leave behind. So now I'm turning it over to you. What do you think? Should the writer feel guilty for her daughter's comment? Or is this just one of those unavoidable, slightly painful growing pains of blending lives? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk. Am I the asshole for asking why my partner didn't stop sex when she found it unenjoyable? This story isn't about physical intimacy alone. It's about the silence that creeps in during it, the tension that settles afterwards, and the questions that go unanswered between two people who are supposed to know each other best. The writer, 22 years old, has been in a relationship for 7 months. Still in the early days, still learning each other's rhythms, quirks, boundaries. And that's important because when something goes off in a relationship this young, it often leaves both people fumbling in the dark for clarity. The night starts with consent. His partner, 23, initiates. Things begin as they often do, familiar, comfortable, even exciting. But halfway through, something shifts. The warmth, it fades. The sounds, gone. The touch, distant. Writer notices. Of course he does. When you care about someone, you feel those changes in your bones. But instead of stopping, he hesitates. He questions it quietly in his mind, but tells himself it might be one of her preferences. Because after all, she had mentioned before that she liked to play uninterested. A part of a kink, she'd said. So they finish. And that's when the real tension begins. She gets up, no words, no smile. She heads to the bathroom, cold, closed off. The air in the room changes, like a storm just passed through. When she returns, writer, still confused, does what most would do. He asks, "Was everything okay?" And the truth spills out. She didn't enjoy it. Now, pause right here. That sentence alone carries weight, not because unenjoyable sex is unheard of, it happens, but because instead of communicating in the moment, she let it continue. And when asked why, she said something that shook writer's understanding of the moment entirely. "I wanted you to enjoy it." That sentence might sound kind, even selfless, but underneath, it's loaded, because that's not consent. That's enduring, not participating. Writer is understandably thrown, hurt even, because for him, intimacy is supposed to be mutual, something shared, something enjoyed by both. He tells her this. "It should be good for both of us," he says. And suddenly, he's the problem. She fires back, "You make everything about you." She accuses him of trying to start a fight, of twisting something small into something dramatic. But let's stop and actually sit with this. What exactly is writer guilty of here? For noticing a shift in her behavior? For asking if she was okay? For being upset that she went along with something she didn't enjoy just to please him? For believing that sex should be consensual and pleasurable for both people involved? Because that last part, that's not selfish, that's not dramatic, that's not making it about him. That's basic emotional maturity. And to be met with emotional coldness and then blamed for simply caring, that's heavy. That kind of response doesn't foster connection. It creates confusion, distance, resentment. Let's be real. Communication during intimacy is essential. Consent doesn't just mean I said yes at the start. It means ongoing, active participation. It means being allowed to stop, to speak up, to say, "This isn't working for me." And yes, it also means being honest enough to admit when something isn't enjoyable, without making the other person feel like they're being attacked for noticing. So where does this leave the writer? He's young. He's trying to navigate a situation that's emotionally complex, and frankly, one where the rules feel like they shifted without warning. And yet his instinct was empathy. His response was care. He wanted clarity, not conflict. That isn't selfishness. That's someone who wants to do better, who wants both people to feel good. And now he's questioning himself because he was made to feel guilty for asking questions that should have been welcomed in any healthy relationship.
So am I the asshole?
For wanting sex to be mutually enjoyable, for feeling uncomfortable that his partner stayed silent through discomfort just for his sake, for thinking there should have been a moment to pause, to talk, to check in? Absolutely not. This isn't about blame. This is about emotional safety. And in this case, the writer didn't violate it. He upheld it. The discomfort came from silence, not from insensitivity. Sometimes people weaponize words like "you're making it about yourself" to deflect from the fact that they aren't ready to talk about what's really bothering them. And unfortunately, it sounds like that might be what happened here. This is a crossroads moment for the writer, one where the path forward isn't just about whether he was the bad guy, but whether he's in a relationship where openness, mutual enjoyment, and vulnerability are truly welcomed. And maybe the real question isn't, am I the asshole? Maybe it's, am I being emotionally met in this relationship at all? Because sex isn't just about touch, it's about trust. And when that trust falters even for a moment, it deserves more than cold silence and blame. It deserves a conversation. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This one hits a lot deeper than it seems at first glance. Am I the asshole for wanting a promised financial gift from my late father's estate, even though he passed away before I received it? Grief has a strange way of unearthing buried things. Old wounds, forgotten promises, and simmering resentment that no one wants to admit was there all along. And this story is tangled in all of that. The writer, 30 years old, is facing a loss that no one is ever quite prepared for: the death of her father. That alone is heavy enough to carry. But when a person passes, what they leave behind, physically, emotionally, and financially, can stir up storms among even the closest of families. And that's where this story begins, in the quiet, uncertain aftermath of a funeral, when the estate is being divided and memories are being measured in dollars. The writer isn't asking for anything extravagant. She isn't demanding more than her share. All she's asking for is equal treatment, a promise fulfilled. Years ago, her younger sister received a generous financial gift from their dad, money for driving lessons and a car. The older sister? Same story. At 17, she got a car and lessons, wrapped up with a bow of parental support. But the writer? She got a promise that when she learned to drive, when the time was right for her, she too would receive that same help, that same gesture of love and support from her father. But life, like it so often does, had other plans. Back when she turned 17, the family wasn't in a good place financially. The money simply wasn't there. And the writer, being the understanding daughter she was, didn't complain. She accepted it. She moved forward, off to university overseas, into cities where cars weren't needed and public transport was king. Driving could wait. But now, she's older, settling, thinking about the future, maybe even children of her own someday. Suddenly, driving isn't a luxury anymore. It's a necessity. And with her father gone, that old promise has come back to the surface. Not as a demand, but as a request to honor something that was never fulfilled. She talks to her mom, and her mother agrees. This conversation belongs with the sisters, so Ryder brings it up, gently. But the response, it's like ice water. Her sisters shut it down. "It's not our fault Dad died before you started learning to drive." Oof. That line cuts deep, as if grief has a statute of limitations, as if fairness depends on timing and convenience. They argue it was her own delay that's to blame, that because the money wasn't physically in her hands before their father passed, it doesn't count. Even the older sister, who got a full driving package at 17, throws in a dig. It's ridiculous to even bring this up. Ridiculous? No. What's ridiculous is pretending this isn't about something much bigger than a few £1,000s. This is about equity, about a daughter wanting to be remembered and treated with the same love and intention her siblings were given. And let's not forget, this wasn't some vague offhand comment. This was a promise, a commitment made by a father to his daughter, and had he lived, it likely would have been fulfilled without question. The writer isn't asking to rewrite the will. She's not storming in with legal threats. She's just asking her siblings to be fair, to recognize that the only reason she didn't receive her gift was because of timing, not because her relationship with their dad was worth any less. But instead of empathy, she gets dismissed, laughed off, called names. Her older sister storms off, too proud or too angry to see what this is really about. And that's what stings the most, because in families, we expect more understanding, more compassion, especially in times of loss. This isn't just about money. This is about being seen, about asking your family to remember you the same way they remember each other. And when that request is met with resistance, it's crushing. So, am I the asshole for wanting what was promised? For asking for fairness, even if it's inconvenient? For believing that a father's word should matter, even if he's no longer here to enforce it? Absolutely not. The writer isn't being greedy. She's being human. She's grieving, reflecting, and trying to make sense of a legacy that now feels fractured. She's not trying to take more. She's asking not to be left with less. And if her sisters can't understand that, maybe they're not seeing the full picture. Because in the end, what we remember about someone isn't just what they said or gave. It's how we carry those intentions forward. It's how we honor their spirit when they're no longer around to speak for themselves. And this feels like a promise worth keeping. What do you think? Was the writer right to bring it up, or should she have let it go for the sake of family peace? Let me know in the comments. This one's not as black and white as it may seem. Am I the asshole for saying no when my friend tried to take back art they gifted me? 10 months ago, something small, something that felt so simple, set the stage for a ridiculous, messy fallout. It all started when the writer's friend gifted them 3 little pieces of artwork. Nothing grand, no ceremony, just a casual, "Here, take these. I don't like them." The friend even called them ugly, said they hated them. But the writer, they saw something beautiful in those pieces. They adored them. And they didn't just toss them in a corner or hang them as an afterthought. No. This meant something. The writer went as far as redecorating their living room around those paintings. They gave them a home, a spotlight, a meaning. But then came that day. One of those strange, seemingly ordinary moments that somehow turns your entire relationship with someone upside down. The writer had both the gift-giving friend and a second friend over, someone who hadn't seen the art before. The second friend, intrigued by the paintings, did what curious people do nowadays. They pulled out their phone and used Google Lens. Just a little search, just a small click, and that's when it all unraveled. It turns out those 3 little paintings, they weren't junk. They weren't throwaways. Each one was valued at $1,000. That's $3,000 just sitting on the writer's wall. No fanfare, no fancy frame, just quietly existing. And suddenly, everything changed. The friend who had gifted the art, who had once dismissed them as ugly, suddenly wanted them back. Immediately. They went as far as pulling them off the wall, right there. Like it never mattered who those paintings had become important to. Like they hadn't been sitting on those walls, adding warmth and personality to the writer's home for nearly a year. But the writer stood their ground, firmly, respectfully. Absolutely not. You gave those to me. That's when the yelling started. The friend lost it, demanded the writer pay $3,000 on the spot. The very same pieces they'd once tossed away without a second thought, now suddenly sacred, suddenly a bill. The writer refused, rightfully so. This wasn't a situation where someone lent out a pricey item with expectations. This was a gift. Clear. Done. Done. Nearly a year old, and now it was being yanked back because it turned out to be worth something? Come on. So the argument exploded. The friend threatened to call the police, and the writer and their other friend kicked him out. Because at some point, you've got to protect your peace, even when it means locking the door on someone you once trusted. And just when things couldn't get messier, they did. Update number 1. The drama didn't end there. The second friend, the one who looked up the artwork's price, realized they too had once given the writer something valuable. And suddenly, it was deja vu. That friend also wanted their item back, claimed it was never a gift but a loan. The plot thickens, but the writer, they had receipts. Literal written proof that the second item had been gifted, not lent, not conditionally offered, gifted. Still, the pressure mounted. 2 friendships unraveling at once, 2 people turning petty over objects that once meant nothing to them until someone else saw their worth. So the writer made a decision, a painful, disheartening one. Just give it all back. All of it, the art, the other items, whatever could be returned would be, because the stress, the emotional toll, it just wasn't worth it. Sometimes peace means letting go, even when you're right. And just like that, two friends became acquaintances. Update number 2. Now here's where things get absurd. Those two friends, the ones who turned on the writer, teamed up. They went out together, bonded over their newfound common enemy. Apparently, nothing brings people closer than shared outrage, even if it's totally misplaced. The writer, meanwhile, was still being respectful. They gave back the second item, but they held on to the artwork. Why? Because around the same time the art was gifted, the writer had given that friend a $2,000 couch. A generous trade, even if it wasn't officially labeled as one. And now, that very art is being appraised. Not on some sketchy website, but by a professional, the girlfriend of a sibling's friend. Strange connection, sure, but real, credible. The writer doubts the art is actually worth $3,000 in total. That price tag, it might have just been inflated by the internet. And even if it isn't, at this point, does it even matter? Final reflection. Here's the thing that sticks. This story isn't about art or money. It's about how quickly people can flip when value is introduced into a situation. It's about how fragile friendships can be when generosity is tested by greed. The writer did nothing wrong. They accepted a gift, treated it with care, cherished it, and when it suddenly had a dollar sign attached, they were expected to either pay up or give it all back, as if the memory of the gift never mattered. No, the writer is not the asshole here. They were loyal, gracious, and more patient than most would be in the same situation. Their only real crime was valuing something more than the people who gave it to them. In the end, they chose peace. They let go of the items and let go of the friendships too, because some things, your peace, your self-respect, are worth far more than any painting on the wall. So, what do you think? When does a gift stop being a gift? And how many loans only become loans after someone checks the price tag? Sometimes life is just weird, and people are even weirder. Am I the asshole for offering eggs to a vegan stranger? Some stories start with conflict. Others, they begin with good intentions and somehow spiral into chaos. This one is a quiet little train wreck, wrapped in politeness, eggs, and the brutal unpredictability of a stranger's reaction. The writer, a 25-year-old woman, doesn't live in a bustling city, glued to her phone and drinking overpriced lattes. No, her days are spent a little differently. She owns a few chickens, not for mass production, not for profit. These are pets, loved, fed, cared for. And as pets do, they give back. In this case, with a generous supply of eggs, more than one person can possibly eat alone. So the writer shares them. Family, friends, neighbors, a carton of fresh eggs here and there. It's her version of kindness, her way of showing appreciation. Last week, she stumbles across something that catches her eye, a listing for books on eBay. A quick back and forth with the seller, a woman described as middle-aged and pleasant, leads to a deal. They agree on a time. The vibe? Chill. Normal, a typical human interaction that promises zero drama. And here's where things take their turn. The same day she's set to pick up the books, the writer realizes she has some leftover eggs. No one she usually gives them to is around for a few days, and she's thinking, why not? She got a great price on the books. The seller was kind. Why not offer a small gift as a token of thanks? Simple, thoughtful, harmless. Except not. The writer arrives. Everything goes smoothly at first. The books are handed over, money exchanged, a quick chat in the driveway, the kind of interaction that should end with a "have a good day." But then, the writer reaches over to her passenger seat and picks up the eggs. "I brought you a little something," she begins. And before she can even finish the sentence, the world erupts. The seller goes nuclear. Not annoyed, not mildly offended. We're talking full-blown rage, screaming, accusations, shouting about how her entire family is vegan, how dare the writer bring such atrocities onto her property, that if her children saw the eggs, it would be too tempting, too damaging. The woman didn't just decline, she detonated. The writer, shocked and caught off guard, backs away, eggs in hand, and leaves as quickly as possible. The shouting continues as she reverses out of the driveway. A surreal moment, unfolding like something out of a bad sitcom. Only no one's laughing, except the writer, nervously chuckling to herself later, trying to process what just happened. But that awkward laugh turns into quiet doubt when she tells a friend the story, because instead of dismissing it, the friend offers a different lens. Maybe the woman's reaction, while intense, came from a place of being triggered. That, to some vegans, especially those raising their kids in strict alignment with those values, eggs are more than just food. They're symbolic, and that gifting them, even innocently, could be seen as invasive. Now the writer is second-guessing herself. Was she really that out of line? She's not some clueless outsider. She's a vegetarian. She gets the lifestyle. She's not ignorant of people's dietary choices. If someone offered her a sausage at a party, she'd simply decline. No offense taken, no tantrum thrown, just a polite no thanks. That's the social contract, isn't it? So now she's wondering, has basic kindness become too risky? Is it wrong to offer a simple gift to someone you don't know very well? Where's the line between being thoughtful and being offensive when you don't know someone's values? Let's sit with that for a second. This wasn't some carnivore crusade. The writer wasn't waving bacon in someone's face. She was offering a handful of fresh eggs, the result of lovingly cared for animals, pets, not livestock. She wasn't trying to convert or corrupt. She wasn't trying to profit. She was trying to say, thanks for being cool. And it blew up in her face. But the question here isn't really about eggs. It's about intent versus impact. How far are we supposed to go to avoid triggering others, especially strangers we barely know? Yes, the vegan woman has a right to her beliefs, a right to raise her children how she sees fit. But was that explosive reaction justified? Does someone's dietary identity give them the right to lash out at someone who meant no harm? And where's the grace? The empathy? It's easy to forget that intent matters. The world is so quick to assume the worst, to jump straight to offense before even asking what the other person meant. This wasn't manipulation. It wasn't passive aggression. It was a gift. A simple act of generosity that was met with anger instead of understanding. And yes, maybe eggs are triggering to her, but the writer didn't know that. And even if she did, is the correct response a screaming match in a driveway? So no, the writer is not the asshole. She's a thoughtful, respectful person who tried to extend a tiny gesture of gratitude and got emotionally bulldozed in return. That doesn't make her naive. It doesn't make her careless. It makes her human. And maybe that's what makes this story sting a little. Because these days, even kindness feels like walking a tightrope. One wrong move and you're the villain in someone else's narrative. But not this time. Not this story. Because if we start punishing people for trying to be kind, what does that say about us? Would I be the asshole for burping every time my boyfriend does after he once said we weren't ready for that step? When I did it. Let's start with something simple. When you're in a serious relationship, when you've moved in together, made big plans, talked marriage and kids, you'd think you've crossed most bridges, right? But apparently for Ryder, the battlefield wasn't infidelity, it wasn't finances, it wasn't even communication. It was burping. Ryder, 33F, has been with her boyfriend, 32M, for nearly 2 years. They've been living together for more than one of those. They talk freely about their future, their goals, the big life stuff. All signs point to a solid, healthy, communicative relationship. Until the burp. One day, Ryder accidentally let one out, a small slip. The kind of involuntary human moment that really shouldn't matter between two people who've seen each other first thing in the morning, shared a bathroom, and probably farted in bed by accident more than once. But her boyfriend's reaction? Not exactly the loving shrug you'd expect. With a smile that was barely covering his horror, he looked her in the eye and said, "I don't think we're ready for that step yet in our relationship." He smiled, sure, but Ryder could feel it. That flicker of discomfort, that subtle rejection, that unspoken, "keep it cute, please." Now fast forward a few weeks. Life, being the unpredictable force it is, threw a curveball. The boyfriend had to undergo a major operation. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to leave him recovering at home, needing help for even basic tasks like eating and walking. And suddenly, the man who once flinched at the sound of a dainty burp, he's now a one-man orchestra. We're talking belches with resonance, with texture, with vibrato, no less. Ryder describes it like he's trying to summon a thunderstorm, or maybe audition for some underground musical titled Less Burperables. At one point, she even wondered if he was going to belt out the national anthem through his digestive tract. And here's the kicker. When she gently brought up his previous horror at her innocent burp, he didn't get flustered. He didn't backtrack. No, he grinned. The audacity. "Please, baby," he said. "It's one of the few things that makes me feel better." That's when Ryder knew. This man was weaponizing the burp. He was doing it shamelessly, proudly. Like he had never once looked her in the eye and implied that bodily functions were too intimate to share. So now, Ryder's asking, would I be the asshole if I burp every time he does? Honestly, let's pause here, because the real question isn't about burping. Not really. It's about fairness, about double standards, about how relationships, even the best ones, can have unspoken rules that sometimes just need to be shaken up. And in this case, shaken up with some gastrointestinal harmony. Update. Turns out the boyfriend was joking. Kind of. Or at least that's what Ryder's hoping. She admits they're both a little shy about bodily things. You know how some couples are shy poopers? Well, these two are shy burpers and shy farters. The kind of couple that might leave the room for a sneeze if it sounded too weird. And as for retaliation, oh, she tried to burp back. She really did. But alas, she's not one of those people who can just summon a burp like it's a party trick. And yes, for those of you who can do that on command, Ryder salutes you. You are the elite. So instead of burping, she brought out the big. She farted. And not just any fart. She committed. She stood up, summoned her inner Elsa, and let it go. It was a moment of liberation, power, pride, the kind of fart you want to write home about. And the boyfriend, he looked at her like she had grown a second head, but Ryder just stared him down and said, "That's right, now two can play this game." They both burst out laughing, and that was the start of a new era in their relationship. Now, every time he burps, she farts, or at least tries to. Not always successfully, of course, but the effort counts. Their evenings are now filled with laughter, revenge toots, and absurd joy. They've gone from buttoned-up burp shame to full-blown bodily fluid symphony. It's weird, it's gross, and honestly, it's kind of beautiful. Because underneath the silliness, what you're really seeing is two people becoming more real with each other, more honest, letting the walls down, sometimes quite literally. Final thoughts. So, would Ryder be the asshole if she burps in response to her boyfriend's burps? Absolutely not. She'd be hilarious, petty in the best possible way, and more importantly, she'd be balancing the playing field. Because if he gets to summon the ghost of a burping opera singer every night and call it self-care, then she gets to strike back, whether it's with a belch, a toot, or a dramatic declaration that this makes me feel better. It's only fair. In the end, what makes a relationship strong isn't just aligned dreams or perfect communication. Sometimes it's fart duets and laughing till you cry, and when you get there, that's when you really know you're ready for that step. So, would Ryder be the asshole for giving her boyfriend a taste of his own bubbly medicine? Let us know what you think, because this one's more than gas. It's about respect, harmony, and flatulence-powered justice. Am I the asshole for not replacing my nephew's leather jacket after my dog had an accident on it? In a house filled with life, 3 dogs, family gatherings, and the kind of chaos that feels almost scripted, you'd think everyone would learn to follow a few simple rules. But as it turns out, even when the rules are spoken loud and clear, some people just don't listen. The writer lives with their spouse and 3 dogs, one of whom, Pickles, recently joined the family after his previous owner passed away. Pickles isn't your average dog. He's sensitive, prefers solitude, and reacts badly to anything outside his bland, dry food diet. We're talking long fur, upset stomachs, and, well, the kind of mess that no one wants to deal with, especially when there are guests over. So this weekend, the writer hosts a family buffet. A full house, siblings, in-laws, and teen nieces and nephews. Food everywhere, laughter, noise, and a firm warning from the writer echoing through the entryway like a battle cry. Don't feed Pickles any treats or human food. Anyone caught will be upstairs shampooing poop out of his fur. Graphic, maybe, but necessary. Pickles doesn't handle food deviations well, and apparently neither does anyone else's sense of self-control. Tracy, the sister-in-law, scoffs. Some laugh, but the writer's warning wasn't a joke, and unfortunately, it went ignored. Hours into the party, writer's husband finds something upstairs that shouldn't be there, a piece of sausage roll. Turns out, 19-year-old Dave, their nephew, decided that the best way to win over Pickles was through his stomach. And just like that, the dominoes fell. The dog, upset and uncomfortable, hides in the bedroom, his safe place. A place that, by the way, now holds everyone's coats, as usual. But this time, Pickles can't hold it in. He has an accident, and it gets on Dave's leather jacket. Let's pause here, because this is where the story turns. This is where emotions boil over and reason takes a back seat. When the writer discovers the mess, they immediately jump into action. Pickles is showered and cleaned, the jacket is wiped down with antibacterial wipes, and for what it's worth, there's no smell, no visible stain. But when Dave sees his jacket, he explodes, voice raised, face flushed. He accuses the writer of making Pickles do it on purpose to prove a point. Let's sit with that accusation. The idea that someone would orchestrate a dog's gastrointestinal meltdown just to say, "I told you so," that's not just ridiculous, it's hurtful. Despite their efforts to smooth things over, the party quickly dissolves. Guests leave, awkward and uncomfortable. But Dave and Tracy stay behind, yelling until they're dragged out by Ryder's brother, who promises they'll sort it out later. But later doesn't come with calm. Instead, the writer gets texts demanding 150 pounds for a new leather jacket. And here's the conflict. The writer says no. And it's not out of spite. It's about principle. Dave fed the dog against clear, repeated warnings. That's what caused the accident. The writer even offers to pay for a professional cleaning, but that's not good enough. They want the jacket replaced. At first, the writer's husband stands firm, but soon he begins to waver. Maybe they should have moved the coats. Maybe, knowing how people ignore the rules, they should have taken extra precautions. After all, Dave's only 19. Maybe this isn't the hill to die on. And here's the moment that feels all too familiar for so many. When being technically right starts to feel emotionally wrong. When you're left wondering, does standing my ground make me the bad guy? Should I just pay up to keep the peace? The writer confesses. If Pickles had chewed the jacket, they'd replace it in a heartbeat. But this wasn't destruction. It was a consequence, and not one caused by the dog, but by a human who ignored very clear instructions. Still, doubt creeps in. The writer can afford it. So why not just replace it? But that's the heart of the matter, isn't it? If we let people off the hook for the consequences of their own actions, especially when they've been warned, what are we really teaching them? So, is the writer the asshole for refusing to buy a new leather jacket? Or is this just another case of someone not listening, dodging responsibility, and then playing the victim when things go sideways? Audience, what do you think? Would you stand your ground like the writer, or would you eat the cost to keep the peace? Is this about 150 pounds, or is it about accountability? Because sometimes the mess isn't just from the dog. Sometimes it's from the people who swore they knew better and didn't listen. Am I the asshole for wanting to tell my wife to get off her phone and take care of the baby? There's something deeply unsettling about feeling like you're the only one keeping your eyes on the baby, as if the safety net, the other half of the team, is checked out. And not in a malicious way, but in that mindless modern way most of us recognize too well, phone in hand, eyes glazed over, completely absorbed. The writer and his wife have an 11-month-old baby, and like many couples navigating early parenthood, they had to make a decision. He works full-time, she stays home with the baby. Not because they wanted a traditional setup, but because finances demanded it. Her income wouldn't have even come close to covering childcare, and the writer even admits if the roles were reversed and it made sense for him to stay home, he would. But here they are. Now, to be fair, the writer doesn't come off as one of those controlling partners nitpicking every little thing. He even acknowledges that both he and his wife are on their phones. A lot. It's 2025, that's the air we breathe now. Reels, group chats, voice notes, TikToks that vanish an hour of your life before you even realize it. He gets it. But he sees a difference, and it's one that's getting harder to ignore. He says when he's on his phone, it's after work, when the baby's asleep, when the dishes are done and the toys are picked up. But his wife, she'll be locked into her screen in the middle of a diaper change, or while they're trying to get out the door, or while their baby's reaching, crying, crawling toward her, and she doesn't notice. And that's the heart of the problem. He's watched their baby crawl after him at the door, desperate for connection, while his wife scrolls. He's been behind the wheel of the car, glancing in the rear view to see her sitting in the back seat, not engaging, not soothing, just scrolling, while their baby cries. And this isn't just about convenience. It's not about being perfect parents who drop everything at the sound of a sniffle. It's about being present, about the difference between tuning out and showing up. The writer's concern isn't that his wife is lazy. He says clearly, the baby is clean, healthy, meeting every milestone. It's not about neglect. But that doesn't mean it's enough, because babies need more than full bellies. They need songs, smiles, touch, eye contact. They need a sense that someone is watching, really watching. And it's not just about the baby either. It's about him, about the way it wears on him to feel like when he's not around, there's a vacuum of attention, that the baby is left to cry longer or left craving affection, all while the woman he loves is buried in her phone, possibly even stressed herself, just trying to self-soothe in the only way she knows how. But when he brings it up, the walls go up immediately. She gets defensive. She says, "You're on your phone too," or "I'm doing work." And while yes, some of it is work, side projects online, it's not most of it. And it's certainly not enough to justify hours of screen time a day, especially if the baby is screaming in the background. So the writer is stuck. He's wondering, am I the asshole if I finally say it out loud? Not just hint at it, not just gently bring it up, but say clearly, directly, you need to be off your phone for at least 8 hours a day when you're with the baby. Then we can split the evening shift. It sounds strict. It sounds like a rule. But when you dig beneath the surface, it's a plea for their child, a plea for sanity, a plea for the kind of parenting that doesn't come from perfection, but from presence. And this is where things get complicated, because this isn't about weaponizing chores or parenting roles or gender expectations. It's about balance. It's about one partner feeling like they're carrying the emotional weight of a baby's needs while the other is just not there, physically present, emotionally absent. And sure, the writer is no martyr. He's not claiming to be a saint. He admits he's tired too. He scrolls too. He's not father of the year, and he's not asking for applause. But what he's asking for is just basic attentiveness, the kind that catches a baby's cry before it becomes a scream, the kind that pauses the scroll to pick up a pacifier. So now the writer's torn. He doesn't want to start a war, but he also doesn't want to stay silent while his child's early years are half witnessed by a parent glued to a screen. So he turns to the internet and asks, am I the asshole for wanting to set a boundary? For wanting my wife to take care of the baby without a phone in her hand, at least during the day? Because sometimes, when you're the only one noticing, saying something feels like betrayal. But staying silent, that feels like giving up. Your turn, audience. Is the writer asking for too much? Or is this a reasonable call out in a digital world where attention is one of the rarest resources we have? When does screen time turn into a silent form of abandonment? And what happens when the person you need to hear you just keeps scrolling? Because sometimes being a good parent isn't about doing it all. It's just about being there when it matters most. Would I be the asshole for resenting my wife for turning down a dream job with a better schedule and salary? The writer is a 30-year-old teacher, husband, and father of 2 young children, kids he and his wife adopted, by choice and with love. He's a man who wears many hats: educator, graduate student working toward becoming a principal, and a hands-on dad who folds laundry, scrubs dishes, and does daycare drop-offs while balancing lesson plans and the grind of higher education. But this isn't a story about burnout or resentment. Not exactly. It's a story about a choice, a single pivotal decision that has been weighing heavily on the writer ever since it happened. His wife, a 29-year-old physical therapist, works full-time at a nonprofit. Her job pays her about $65,000 a year. She gets 2 weeks of vacation, no pension, and only a partial health insurance premium. Fridays, she picks up extra work as a pediatric PT contractor, something she says she enjoys, and maybe she does. But that smile, that bounce in her step when she talks about work, lately the writer's not so sure anymore. Last August, she was offered something close to a golden ticket, a school district PT position, the same district where the writer himself teaches. It offered a 30% salary boost, 30%, bringing her income to $85,000, full health coverage, a pension, a shorter workday, summers off. Every holiday the kids would have, she'd have too. A synchronized family calendar, time for rest, time for herself, time for her family, and she turned it down. She said the setting wouldn't fulfill her, that school-based PT work wasn't for her, that it wouldn't feel the same, and the writer just stood there, stunned. He didn't argue, not then. But that moment, that decision, it's never really left him, because what she said, what she chose, now echoes every single time she complains about being overwhelmed. And she does complain, often. She's stressed, she's tired, she's critical of him, of others, of life in general. The house feels tense. Everyone walks on eggshells when she's in one of her moods. And the writer, well, he swallows his tongue every single time she says she has no free time. Because in his mind, whether fair or not, she had the chance to change that, to make life better, easier, lighter. But she didn't. And here's where it gets complicated, painfully human. The writer isn't just frustrated by the finances or the lost vacation days or even the schedule. It's deeper than that. It's watching the person you love seemingly choose the harder path, then turn around and blame the world for how rocky it is. It's loving someone so much that you pick up the pieces for them, but then silently wonder why they won't stop breaking them in the first place. He does the chores, most of them. Dishes, laundry, groceries, finances, pickups, drop-offs. He's not asking for a medal, but he's asking for something. Understanding, gratitude, peace, and he knows how this might sound. Petty, selfish, small. But that's why he hasn't brought it up before. Not really. Because he knows that no one wins in the comparison game. He used to work sales, long shifts, late nights. He chose this teaching path because he wanted a family-centered life. And now that he has it, he feels guilty for enjoying it, because every time he relaxes, she reminds him of how little she has. The most uncomfortable part? The part he barely wants to admit? There's something about her job that doesn't sit right. A feeling, a gut instinct, one he's tried to ignore but can't shake. Her boss, older, married, charming, he seems decent enough. But the way she talks about him, the admiration, it's different, almost glowing. The kind of praise that raises eyebrows even when there's no obvious red flag. He's not accusing, he's not jealous, but the unease is there, quiet and nagging. And now, the writer finds himself stuck in the tension between what could have been and what is. Between wanting to support his wife and wanting to scream, "You had an out, you chose this." So he turns to us. Would I be the asshole for thinking she gave up her right to complain about stress after turning down a job that could have changed everything? Let's take a breath here, because this post, it hits something raw, something real. On the surface, it's about jobs, but underneath, it's about resentment, unspoken resentment, the most dangerous kind. The kind that grows roots and wraps itself around a marriage like ivy. The writer is clearly trying. He's involved, thoughtful, present. And while tone can't be fully captured in text, his words carry the weight of someone who's been carrying too much for too long without saying anything. And his wife, she's drowning. But instead of reaching for the lifeline, she's defending the water. She had a chance at relief, and she walked away from it. Maybe she had her reasons. Maybe they're valid. Maybe fulfillment does matter more than schedule or salary. But when you make that choice, you own it. You don't get to chain yourself to a life raft and then complain it's not a yacht. Not when you watch the yacht drift by. So no, the writer isn't the asshole for feeling what he feels. Feelings aren't sins. It's what we do with them that matters. And while he hasn't lashed out, hasn't thrown it in her face, the truth is something's simmering. And if they don't talk about it soon, really talk, this slow burn is going to turn into something explosive. Would he be the asshole for thinking she forfeited her right to complain? Maybe not. But would he be the asshole if he let this resentment fester until it poisons the very partnership they're trying to hold together? That's the real question. Would I be the asshole for vaccinating my child behind my husband's back? The writer, a 32-year-old mother, stands at a painful crossroads. She's not just a parent. She's a woman caught between the person she vowed to build a life with and the tiny human she now lives to protect. 6 months ago, she and her husband welcomed their first child. And from the very start, there was one topic she had always been vocal about: vaccinations. The writer has long believed in the science, in the professionals trained to protect lives, in the mountain of data behind modern medicine. Vaccines to her weren't a debate. They were a basic, life-saving standard. Her husband, however, was always a skeptic. Even before the baby was born, there were signs, small hesitations, vague discomforts, but nothing that signaled outright opposition. So when their newborn received the standard vaccinations at birth, 2 months and 4 months, the writer felt reassured. Maybe, just maybe, he was putting trust in the system for the sake of their child. But now, at 6 months old, everything has shifted. Her husband has spiraled into a rabbit hole of fear and misinformation. Recent measles outbreaks haven't shaken him. If anything, they've only fueled his resolve. He doesn't want their child to receive any more vaccinations. Not one. And it's not just paranoia. It's personal. Her husband grew up with an autistic sibling, a sibling who was nonverbal for years, who struggled deeply during childhood. And then there's her mother-in-law, whose offhand comments and quiet suspicions planted seeds that have now taken root in his mind. From there, the internet did the rest. The writer tried. She listened. She read the articles he sent. But what she found wasn't science. It was speculation. It was fear masquerading as fact, anecdotes framed as universal truths. Most of what he clings to is unsupported by any peer-reviewed research. The data simply isn't there. Still, he insists. He talks about how Big Pharma silences dissenting doctors, how you can't sue vaccine manufacturers, so they must be hiding something, that it's all just a script, repeated word for word by pediatricians trained to parrot a narrative. But the writer, she fights back with truth, with logic, with calm, grounded facts. She points to the decades of global data, to the medical consensus from the CDC, WHO, AAP, to pediatricians who vaccinate their own children. She brings in their child's doctor, who even offers to speak with him one-on-one. But nothing works. Her husband walks away unmoved, accusing everyone of being brainwashed. And now she's stuck. They've argued for weeks. She doesn't want to go behind his back, but she's starting to feel like she has no choice. The child is due for another round of shots, and she sees the window closing. This isn't a hypothetical disagreement anymore. This is a decision with lifelong consequences. The weight of it all is crushing. Her husband is a loving, involved father. He's not some villain, he's just scared. But that fear has led him down a path that the writer cannot follow. He's even declared that if they have another child, there will be no vaccinations. Period. Her response was quiet, chilling even. Then this baby will be an only child. And so she turns to us, not for validation, but for clarity. Would I be the asshole for vaccinating our child despite his beliefs? Now here's where it really hits hard. This isn't just a fight about medicine. It's a war between fear and facts, between partnership and parenthood, between honoring a spouse's voice and protecting a child's future. The writer clearly values her marriage. She's gone out of her way to listen, to engage, to seek professional input. But what happens when one parent's fear puts their child at risk? Vaccines aren't about one kid, they're about every kid. About protecting the vulnerable, the immunocompromised, the newborn in daycare who's too young to be vaccinated. The stakes aren't theoretical. They're real, tangible, measurable. And yet going behind her husband's back would fracture trust, possibly for good. That's not a small thing. Marriages are built on shared decisions, not secret ones. But can a mother really stand by and do nothing while preventable diseases inch closer to her child? There is no clean answer here. No perfect path. Just a woman, a mother, trying to do what's right in a world where the truth is constantly being pulled apart. So, would she be the asshole? Or would she be a mother doing what mothers have always done, putting their child first, no matter the cost? Am I the asshole for punching my dad's friend at my birthday after he insulted my girlfriend? Sometimes the people who were there when we were kids, the ones who saw us at our most vulnerable, aren't the ones who end up treating us with love. Sometimes they're the ones who dig deepest with the sharpest knives, and they do it with a smile, because in their minds, they're allowed to. This story doesn't begin with a fight. It begins with a woman who loves her partner enough to plan something special. A beach setup, food, people who matter. Nothing flashy, just real. She wanted to give the writer, a 29-year-old man, a moment to breathe, a moment to celebrate himself, even when he didn't feel like celebrating. Let's pause there. That small detail that she had to convince him to even have a birthday gathering speaks volumes. People who grow up constantly being dismissed, belittled, or made to feel unworthy often learn to stop expecting good things. Birthdays, love, attention, those things can feel like luxuries for people who were raised to believe they didn't deserve them. But this girlfriend, she showed up. She saw value in the writer, and she went out of her way to make him feel it, even just for a day. That's not just sweet, that's healing. Then walks in the father. Now, the writer admits their relationship isn't great, and when he says that, it's not with dramatic fanfare, just a quiet acknowledgement, like someone who's made peace with the emotional minefield they grew up in, someone who's learned to expect very little from the people who were supposed to give them everything. And right behind the dad comes the storm, the old family friend. Let's call him. Every family has an R, that person who acts like they know you just because they've seen you grow up, who holds your past like a leash around your neck, who disguises cruelty with familiarity. And R, he's had a long history of making the writer feel small. Not directly, not with yelling or slurs, but with that low-grade passive-aggressive poison, the kind that's served with a smile and wrapped in sarcasm. And that's what makes what happens next so twisted. At first, it's little digs, little jokes. R tells the writer's girlfriend she must be a saint for putting up with him. Everyone laughs, except it's not funny. Not when it's layered with years of subtle disrespect. Not when it's coming from someone who spent a lifetime cutting you down with a smirk. The writer doesn't react. He lets it go. Because that's what he's probably always done. Keep the peace. Swallow it. Pretend it doesn't burn. But then R crosses a line so cruel and so deliberate it stops everything cold. "You're really doing charity work with this one, huh?" He says it loud. Proud, fork in hand like he's serving up some kind of witty roast, and you can feel the tension ripple through the table. Conversations stop, the air shifts, and the girlfriend, she freezes. She's the one who planned this, who made it beautiful, who brought everyone together because she believed in love and connection. And in one moment, this man humiliated her, not just as a guest, but as a partner, as someone who loves the writer deeply, who showed up for him in ways his own family never has. And this time, the writer didn't sit still. He stood up, walked over, and punched the man in the face. No warning, no dramatic speech, just pain condensed into one clear physical act. The kind of act that years of frustration, humiliation, and suppressed rage can create in a single heartbeat. R fell back, shouting, shocked, playing the victim. But the real silence came from the dad. He just sat there, didn't defend the writer, didn't check on R either, just looked away. Like this mess wasn't his to clean up, like the wounds he helped create weren't splattered all over the table in front of him, and the writer left. But the aftermath didn't end there. The messages poured in, family members scolding him, accusing him of losing control, telling him he should have just laughed it off, that he can't just hit someone because they said something cruel. But here's the thing. They weren't just words. That jab wasn't just about being annoying. It was about erasing the writer in front of someone who loves him, in front of people he allowed into his carefully guarded world. And when someone tries to erase you like that, especially someone who's done it before, year after year, it's not just a joke. It's an attack, a deeply personal one. Now the writer is stuck with the fallout. People telling him to apologize, telling him he caused a scene, that he ruined his own birthday. But what would have happened if he hadn't stood up? If he had just sat there, let R laugh, let everyone look at his girlfriend in awkward silence, let the moment pass like it meant nothing, that would have sent a message that you can disrespect him and the people he loves and he'll take it. So no, he doesn't regret standing up for her. Not for a second. But he's also a man who reflects. He's been reading through the comments, taking it in, thinking hard, and eventually he decided to apologize. Not because he regrets defending her, but because he knows that real strength comes with ownership. Because when you've been raised in chaos, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show you're capable of more than pain. Update. R apologized. Invited the family to dinner. Does that undo what was said? No, but it's a start. And maybe, just maybe, this moment cracked something open. Not just for R, but for the entire family dynamic. Because pain that festers in silence only grows deeper. But when someone finally speaks up, even with a punch, it forces the world around them to look. Am I the asshole for punching someone who humiliated my girlfriend in front of everyone on a day she planned just for me, maybe to some people, but to others? That punch wasn't violence. It was truth that had waited far too long to be said out loud. Let me know your thoughts below. Was the writer out of line, or was this a long overdue reckoning in a family that's been comfortable disrespecting him for years? Let's talk. The guy I dated refused to show me his STD results, so I told him I was pregnant. All right, let's unravel this roller coaster. Our writer met a man on Bumble, and from the first swipe, things escalated fast. Not your casual, hey, what's up, kind of connection, but deep conversations, intense emotional chemistry, and by the time their first date even rolled around, it already felt like they were knee-deep in a relationship. Sounds romantic on paper, right? But things rarely stay that perfect. After their date, things turned physical quickly. Emotional intimacy, constant flattery, and let's call it what it was, love bombing. The kind of whirlwind where someone showers you with affection, makes you feel like the only person in the world, and then begins to pull back little by little. That's when the cracks began to show. Instead of real dates or time spent getting to know each other outside the bedroom, the relationship fell into a pattern. He'd arrive late at night, still in his work clothes. He's an accountant, mind you, and this was during tax season, so he had a built-in excuse. They'd be intimate, maybe talk or watch a show, and then he'd vanish into the night like some kind of emotionally unavailable Cinderella. And the texting? Sporadic. Days would pass without a response, and when she finally brought it up, he just pointed to his busy schedule. But when she started pulling back, responding less frequently, suddenly he had feelings about that. He was insecure. He felt like she didn't care. It was a classic manipulative twist. He was allowed to be distant, but she had to stay close. Now, this is where things take a turn. Not a plot twist, but a red flag tornado. One night, after not hearing from him in a while, Ryder gets a call. But it's not a sweet "I miss you." No, he wanted to know if she could get him drugs, acid or shrooms, for a club night with friends. Not only that, but he didn't invite her because of her epilepsy. That was his excuse. At that moment, Ryder knew this wasn't what she wanted, but she didn't end it right away. She tried, once again, to explain how hurt she was by his neglect and lack of communication. He brushed it off, again, said he was caught off guard, claimed he had allergies, anything to dodge the conversation. Eventually, she ended it, cordially, clearly. And what did he do? He ghosted her, and then reappeared like nothing ever happened. Gaslit her, really. Made her feel like she was the problem, that she was just insecure and needed his affection. That's not love, that's manipulation. She blocked him. But the story didn't end there. A week later, Ryder noticed something wrong. Her period was late, and something wasn't right down there. An odor that had started after the one time he finished inside her. Let's pause for a second. This man had a pregnancy fetish and begged her to let him finish inside her, even though she wasn't on birth control. And in a moment of misplaced trust, she said yes. She was on her period and figured the risk was low. But now, her body was telling her something was off. She reached out. She told him her concerns, and at first, he acted like he cared. Told her she wasn't pregnant, told her everything was fine, but when she asked to see proof, his STD test results, he refused. Said he'd only show her if she agreed to see him. That's not concern, that's coercion. He flipped the script, called her paranoid, accused her of throwing away everything they had, said she was projecting. All she wanted was peace of mind, but he held it hostage. She eventually went to the doctor. Thankfully, no STIs, no pregnancy, but she needed a medical-grade douche to cleanse her body of what he left behind. That detail alone is devastating. She was emotionally manipulated and physically left to deal with the consequences alone. So, she told him she was pregnant. Yes, she lied, said she was deciding whether to keep the baby. And now, he's panicking, begging to see the paperwork. She told him the same thing he told her. I'll show you when I feel like it. Just a few days of that anxiety, just long enough for him to understand what he put her through. Was it petty? Maybe. But after all that gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and downright selfishness, can you really blame her? And just when you think he couldn't get worse, he sends another message. Says it's not his responsibility because it's her body. Says he still wants to see her, but only if she's not rude because that's not his vibe. His vibe. Sir, you are not the victim here. Ryder told him to take a shower and stop asking women to beg for his sperm like it's some sacred offering. She blocked him. And now, Ryder turns to us with one question. Am I the asshole for telling him I was pregnant when he refused to show me his STD results? Let's be real. 2 wrongs don't make a right, but not every wrong is equal. What he did, emotionally manipulating her, neglecting her, lying, coercing, and then refusing to provide basic medical proof after unprotected sex, is far beyond disrespectful. It's reckless, it's cruel, and it's dangerous. Did Ryder lie? Yes, but that lie came from a place of desperation, fear, and a need for justice, even if just for a moment. This wasn't revenge. This was reclaiming a sliver of power in a situation where she had none. And as far as I'm concerned,